All right, there we go. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm so excited for today's Course Cafe where we're talking about offer ecosystems. I was up late last night putting together super fun things for all of us to play with today. So I think we're gonna have a great time. So thank you for those of you who are here live. Thank you for those of you who are watching the replay. I'm so excited about today's topic. So really, if this is your first time coming to a Course Cafe, watching a Course Cafe, how it works is each Course Cafe has a theme. So for today, we're talking about offer ecosystems. And throughout the presentation, I'm going to pause and I'll ask if there's any questions and you can kind of share what's on your mind or not. These are super low pressure. Pretty much you get to come exactly as you are. So if you want to sit here quietly, camera off, just existing, I love that. If you want to kind of have your camera on and say hi or raise your hand and ask questions, also great. We're super, super casual in the sense that, like, I don't mind if you interrupt me. If you're like, wait, Emily, can you go over that one more time? Or can you share another example? Feel free to put that in the chat. Or I love the raise hand feature on Zoom because it just lets me know that you're like, wait, I have thoughts, I have questions. And then, of course, at the end, I'll be sure to leave lots and lots of time for questions about anything that's on your mind around course creation, launching, creating materials, your offer suite. Like I said, we have a theme, but it's okay if we go a little bit off theme as well. I see we have a few more friends who snuck in. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Anne. So nice to have you here. Okay, so I think let's get started. We are talking about offer ecosystems today. And I love using the word ecosystem instead of offer suite or offer model or program suite, because as soon as you use the word ecosystem, you can already get this sense of like, okay, there's a symbiotic relationship. Things are working together, they're flowing together. And, it's very rare that we have just like a linear, tiny ecosystem. And often I find what happens is when we hear, big name coaches who are using big name like revenue to say how they're doing things, it's often accompanied by, I run a 7-figure business, and the secret to a 7-figure business is this. You need to have one offer and only one offer, and it's a membership. Or you need to have an ascension model, and it's 3 offers where you stack together like a toolkit, a group program, and one-to-one services. Or you need to have a self-liquidating funnel of a tiny offer where it's a whole bunch of tiny offers stacked together. And every single person is going to be saying that their way is the best way because that's what's worked for them. And like, yay, that's what works for them. But the problem is that when we try to squish ourselves into someone else's model, it can create these little like pinches and like icks, or it can leave us feeling like, but what about this? Like, oh, I really like 50% of how they taught this, but I also wrote a book. How does my book fit into this? Or I really love the idea of live events. How do live events fit into this? And as soon as we're like, okay, I want to get this like perfect, amazing results, and I have this vision of the impact I want to create, but it doesn't quite fit in this model. So how do I do it? I'm just going to I can hear someone talking, so I'm just going to pop some people on mute here. Let's see here, mute and mute. And of course, if at any minute you want to ask a question or come off mute, just feel free to do so. I just find it helps with the captioning if we don't get any kind of like crosstalk there. So what I want to do today is I want to walk you through how I think about offer ecosystems with my clients. I want to walk through the different components, answer your questions, because my goal is for you to think about all the moving pieces that are going on in your ecosystem and finding ways for them to flow together and feel really, really good. So I'd say this is probably one of the most common questions I get asked is like, how do I have a insert offer? It's often like a webinar, a lead magnet, a tiny offer, a self-study course that doesn't cannibalize my group program, my big course, my one-to-one services. And so by thinking through things intentionally, we are able to really find a way where you're like, I feel good about things. This feels good. It like honors me. So what I'm going to do here is, let me just pull it up. I'm going to share my screen because I made us a super fun Canva whiteboard play space. If you've been watching me on Instagram, you've seen sneak peeks of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk us through some things I made. And then at the end of this, you all get the templates. So then you have your own place to play around and use and have fun, because I was like, this is too cool. I can't keep this to myself. All right, so what am I doing here? Share screen. All right, Zoom is always in my way. There we are. Okay, while I'm sharing screen, I might not see you if you raise hands. So feel free if you do have questions as we're going along to just unmute and be like, Emily, I have a question, so that I don't miss you. So there are four main considerations that we need to have when we are building out our offer ecosystem. And I'm going to walk through these in a specific order, but I want you to think about them all as gateways in the sense that when you're mapping out how your offers fit and flow together, you can actually start with any one of these. You can figure out which one feels the best. So we're going to be talking about the journey, the transformation. That's where we're going to be starting. That's what's on the screen right now. We're going to be talking about the containers within your offer ecosystem. So basically anything that you can offer. We're going to be talking about the role that they play, and we're going to be talking about the price point that they have. When you're thinking about what matters most to you, or if you're like, I think there's room to add something new into my offer suite, you can choose whichever one of these feels like the easiest gateway to come into the process. I'm going to be leading us through it in a certain order, but I just want to give you that permission that if you're like, no, I'm trying to start with the transformation, but my brain keeps jumping to price point because I want to add a different price point into things, or it keeps jumping to the role because I feel like I'm missing this role. That's totally fine. The goal here is we want to have an ecosystem that really honors your values. So if you have a value of sustainability for yourself energetically around feeling like I love my offers and they're really sustainable and amazing for me to deliver, then like that's going to be what we prioritize as we map it out. If you have a value of accessibility, I want to make sure that I have something for everyone at every price point. That's what we're going to look at. And maybe you have something where you're like, I want simplicity. That's the most important thing to me. I don't want 5 million different things going on. Which point, that's what we're going to do. So just knowing that you get to decide what matters most to you. And as always in my world, there are no wrong answers. There's just what feels right for you. So we are going to start with this journey to transformation. This is truly the encompassing, underpinning element of your offer ecosystem. It is the idea that if someone comes into your world and they absorb absolutely everything you have to give them, from whether it's a lead magnet, workshops, your courses, your toolkits, your group programs, your one-to-one services, whatever it is, any way that they're engaging with you, what is the ultimate transformation? What is the full journey that you are taking them on? Now, if you came to last month's Course Cafe where we were talking more about signature frameworks, this is where your framework can be really helpful because you've already started to think about this. You've already started to think about, okay, this is the outcome I'm guiding people towards, and these are the components. Maybe you have a signature process. Maybe you guide people through a cyclical journey. Maybe you just have focal areas and you're like, okay, these are like the ultimate thing that I want to help people with is having a business they love. And I can focus on like visual design and branding. I can focus on messaging. I can focus on sales. There's a couple different areas I can focus. Or maybe you're like, I strictly help people design a sales page. And that has a very clear linear process. We start here and we go like this. Or in my case, what I'll show you an example of my offer ecosystem. It follows a cycle, the program creation cycle. And so getting a sense of what are the different kind of pieces of that transformation. This is going to help us get a sense of the depth and the scope that you are helping people with. Because you can have an offer that covers everything from A to Z. You can have an offer that only covers A to D. You can say every single thing in my ecosystem covers the full transformation, or you know what, these things just cover little bits and pieces of it. But it starts by getting a sense of what is the transformation that I am supporting my people with? What is the full journey that I could take them on and that I can help them with? Now, the invitation here is that everything is connected. So this is where scope creep can get a little bit sneaky. And this is where I really want you to honor what you love. Because I don't want you to offer something just because you can. Like just because like, oh, that'd be really helpful. For example, I know probably I should, like I could, I should, because we don't need to should ourselves. I could help people with list building. Because if you have a bigger list, it can help you with a course launch. But I know that my zone of genius is transformation architecture. Like truly my zone of genius is helping you take your magic, take your ideas, take your content and architect it into a learning experience. Whatever container that learning experience is, I've helped people from, lead magnets, signature talks, through to courses, through to certifications, through to 3,000 person conferences. Yes, it's true. If I really think about the full journey, helping them build an audience could be like considered an outer ring, but that doesn't light me up. It's not my zone of genius. I don't enjoy it. So it's completely okay for me to draw a scope around that. There's other people out there who are experts at it. So as you're thinking about the transformation, as you're thinking about the ways that you support people, full permission to draw scope and take anything that goes like, I don't want to do that. Like, just no, not going to, like that kind of visceral, like, don't want to do it, or that's not fun. And you can either go, I'm never doing this, or you can put it in the pantry and say, you know what, maybe at some point I will do this. Maybe at some point. So this is the first thing that you can consider. Before we jump into the kind of second consideration, I'd love just to check in and hear if there's any questions or someone would like to share their example or get clarification. You're welcome to put things either in the chat, or you're welcome to come unmute and ask questions. I'm just going to open the chat to make sure I can see it here. And seeing if anyone. Any questions, Danielle? I think I see you're unmuted. Did you have a question? No? Okay. It might be just Zoom showing me that. All right, perfect. Okay, so then what we will do is we'll carry on. See, Paula, you say it's hard to choose. If you want to elaborate, you can. And if you don't, that is also totally okay. Okay, yes, going to elaborate. All right, while you're doing that, I'm going to keep creeping forward, but we'll circle back as you kind of like type out, oh, it's hard to choose between values. Yes, 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 yes. And this is where you don't also have to choose like full permission to hold multiple ones when you're thinking about like, okay, like what's most important to me? Is it accessibility, sustainability, simplicity? I think if you choose or like can kind of narrow it down to like a few, like 2 or 3, then we can do like I need a better word for this because it shouldn't be stressful, but I like to call it a stress test where it's like, okay, we're mapping out the ecosystem. We have a sense of the components. We've kind of used our initial values of like, okay, I feel like this is the most important thing to help us structure it. Then once we have a draft, we can go, okay, how would I feel about this? Like, how would I feel if I had all of these offers up and running? Like, would I get this sense of like, oh, this feels so freaking good? Would it be like, ooh, like, what if people, like everyone signs up for all these things? Like, I don't even know how I would manage that. And so you can kind of go back and forth and like full permission for it to be an iterative journey, like full permission for you to just say like, I'm going to draft this and then I'm going to launch 1 or 2 offers and then I'm going to see how I feel. Because the goal here isn't to have like 5 million offers if that doesn't feel good. The goal is to have an ecosystem that fits and flows together. And then Paula also says, it's hard to understand for me to compartmentalize content in different offers. Yes, absolutely. So this is what we're going to be getting to next. So that's super great. So this is where once we have a sense of the transformation that we are offering, we have kind of a general idea of like the underpinning journey that we're taking people on. This is where we can now start to think about the different types of formats or things that we want to include. And what I want to really emphasize here is this isn't something that you have to like one and done and say like, okay, I've mapped this out. Emily helped me map this out. And now this is going to be my offer ecosystem. And I can't add to it. I can't subtract to it. I have to build it all out and just like get it firing out there. I'm going to show you mine once I've walked you through the main components here. And you'll notice there's like a lot of moving pieces in mine. And that has evolved over 3.5 years in business. Like that has not just been something that I like came out of the gate with. They've changed, they've evolved, I've added things, I've taken things out. I also am like in the process of upgrading and elevating all of my programs. So that has also led to me going, I'm going to pull this out as a separate program. I'm going to merge this together as one program. So it gets to be iterative. You get to change, you get to grow. Again, that's why I refer to the program creation as a cycle. And I love using the word ecosystem because like, when was the last time you looked outside and things were exactly the same? Like in nature, things are constantly changing and evolving. And we're not like, well, that's weird. I wanted that tree to look exactly the same for my entire life. It's like, we're not going to judge nature for shifting and changing. So we don't need to judge ourselves if things need to move around. Okay, so let's talk about consideration number 2, which is the formats and the containers for each component within our ecosystem. And of course, if at any point you have questions or need clarifications, feel free to pop it into the chat or feel free to raise your hand or come on mute. So I did this in Canva and I just kind of used arbitrarily shapes to delineate things. I'm going to give you the template to this and you can make this however you want. So if you're like, these shapes don't make sense, or I don't like these words, or I don't like these phrases, change it. These are just examples. But what I was kind of thinking about when I was like using these shapes, I was like, the main thing I want to show is kind of the different, like, in my mind, weight that these different types of containers can have, in the sense of most likely investment, but also of your time, of your presence, of like the energy that you're putting into it. It's not always exactly this cut and dried. As we know, you can have a one-to-one service that's like 30 minutes and takes you like maybe a 30-minute call and an hour to deliver and you're done. You can have a group program that is 6 months and has one-to-one time as well as group calls like the incubator. So it's not necessarily to say that one-to-one services are always more time intensive and make more money. I just kind of generally set things up this way. So again, there's multiple gateways into mapping out your offer ecosystem, and it all kind of depends on what feels top of mind. Some people start with going, this is the journey. What can my people realistically sustain in transformation? And the deeper the work we do, the more that we realize that it's very rare that one offer, if it's not like one-to-one coaching or consulting, can actually sustain people through that entire journey, which is where we start to kind of segment things. So when you have a sense of like, oh, I've got a 5-part process, and in my one-to-one work, I can probably guide people through that whole process. But if they were on their own and had no support from me, I think it'd probably feel better if they did steps 1 and 2 on their own, and then maybe steps 3 to 5 in a group program. So you can kind of get a sense, and this is where I really want you to trust your gut, of like the sustainability of the transformation. How much can your people handle? Or are there certain formats or containers that lend themselves better to different parts of the journey? And this is going to be very, very dependent on you and your niche and how you support people, as well as your audience and what they have going on. So what I've done here is I've just given you some examples of different types of formats or containers that you can include. So we've got lots of different kind of like one-to-one services. If you run an agency, it could be agency services. These could be live events like VIP days, VIP weekends, retreats, conferences, something where it's probably drawing on a lot more of you or a lot more of your team. Then in the middle here, I have more scalable programs. And as you know, I love these to come in all shapes and sizes. We can have self-study courses from as small as like toolkits and mini courses to kind of medium courses to signature courses that are self-study, courses that have communities. You can have group programs, masterminds, certifications. You can have hybrid programs. So for instance, like the incubator is a hybrid program where there's group calls, but there's also one-to-one feedback and support from me. This is kind of the scalable containers for your ecosystem. And then over here, I have little ones that just like, they feel a bit smaller because they feel like there's a little bit more distance from you. So, this could be something like a book. It could be lead magnets in all shapes and sizes. It could be signature talks, TED Talks, presentations at conferences, workshops, guest expert workshops, pretty much anything where you are, again, amplifying your impact. You are sharing your thought leadership. You are putting what you believe out there. I also included a few other ideas down here, things like summits, membership programs, consulting for corporations, subcontracting, being an expert or a coach in other people's programs. These are all the different ways you can offer your services. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. So if you already have things going on, you can kind of make a list of like, oh, here's what I'm currently doing. And for some people, it might look like one-to-one services. That's my list. And that's why I'm here, because I want to figure out what's the best scalable offer for me to add in. Other people might look like, okay, I have my one-to-one services. I'm a coach in someone else's program. I've got 2 small courses. It's feeling good, but I feel like there's opportunity for something else. So again, this really gets to be custom to you. So I want to check in and see, what questions do you have based on what we've talked about so far, thinking about the transformation that you're offering in your ecosystem, as well as the different potential or existing containers that you are offering. What questions come up for you when you start thinking about these? Again, feel free if you want to put something in the chat, you absolutely can. If you want to raise your hand and come off mute, you can do that as well. If for some reason your hand is raised and I don't see it, feel free to just be like, Emily, please help. Okay, so Matthew says, I'm trying to understand the difference between mastermind and group program. Such a great question. So, I mean, the short answer is technically you could say they're the same thing because a mastermind is a form of a group program. I put them as two separate things just to kind of, sometimes I find people are like, when they hear group program, they think curriculum driven, people are moving through different types of content or there's a bit more structure, that type of thing. Whereas mastermind feels more facilitated by the group. It could be a peer mastermind. You could also be leading it. I find that it's less common that masterminds have like curriculum attached to them. So absolutely a mastermind is a form of a group program. So you could say that they are exactly the same thing. And if in your mind you want to like merge the two, that's totally fine. You can also think about them separately. If for instance, maybe you have both in your offer ecosystem and you're like, I have my mastermind, but then I have let's say you're a web designer and you're like, okay, I have a mastermind where I mentor other web designers. And then I have a group program where I lead people through my signature web design process. And it's curriculum driven. It includes feedback on what they're working on. And it's more for people who are like learning web design skills versus experienced web designers growing their business. How does that land? Let me know if that helps clarify things. And then Palace says, where do you think a membership lies? So the way I think about memberships is they tend to be almost more of like a business model than necessarily like a specific offer. Like they're kind of both and. Very often a membership is like wrapping around other things. It's a pricing model for other things that you offer. So whether it's like, here's a collection of courses, or here's a really large course that's dripped out, or here's a series of resources, or here's just access to a community, the membership tends to be almost like more of like a pricing model where it's like, I'm kind of like subscribing to things. So in general, I put memberships as like a slightly different category because it truly can wrap around any of these. So, I know a law firm that has a membership for one-to-one services. So essentially it's like you subscribe and you pay each month and then you get, document review and you can ask your lawyer questions and things like that. Or, one of my clients has a membership and it's a combination of courses and resources. So it's almost more of like a pricing model than necessarily like its own container for like a specific thing. But again, that's how I think about it. And if you're like, nope, for me, it feels like it would be its own little circle on there, then like, go for it. That's awesome. Okay, Matthew says, yes, that does clarify. Great. And Pala says, it's incredible, Emily, to see at this slide. And immediately I read the names and the shapes and I feel repelled or attracted to the different offers. Yay, amazing. Absolutely kind of trust that like pull in or pull out where you're like, oh, I would never do that versus like, oh, that's interesting. Because what we're going to do is we can kind of start to play around with like, what would it look like if I added this in? Or like, you know what, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, wow, this really, really does feel like something I want to offer. Okay. If there's any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat as we go along. And I'm going to move into consideration number 3. So we've talked about the full transformation. We've started to think about the different kind of formats or containers for each component. So now we can think about the role that they play. Now, I mentioned here on the slide as well, there can be multiple roles played by each offer. I mean, in general, probably like 98% of the things that we're talking about, their main purpose is to make revenue. But there are other roles that things in your offer ecosystem can play. So for instance, one can be thought leadership, where you're like, whether you're getting paid or not, you're like the actual main purpose of me having a TED talk, of me having a book, of me doing these guest workshops in other people's communities. The main purpose is for me to amplify my message and amplify the impact I can have and elevate myself as a thought leader and as an expert. Now, I use the word thought leadership, and I know some people have a very polarizing reaction to this. Some people are like, I can't call myself a thought leader, like, ugh. So if it feels better to think about as like, this demonstrates your expertise, or this is an impact amplifier, then like that's totally fine. I want you to use the language that feels good to you. But this would be the role of this piece, is mainly to go like, this is how I think about things. Let me get it out there. Oh, Matthew has to hop off. Thanks so much for coming today, and enjoy the replay when you get there. So we can have thought leadership as one of our roles or our intentions. Another one that we can have is connection and trust, where the main thing, the main purpose of this is to connect with your people. So for instance, my course cafes, my main focus, my main intention of offering this is to connect with my audience. I mean, I absolutely love it. I love to be able to see people's faces. I love to be able to hear your questions. I love to be able to hear how you're thinking about things and share how I'm thinking about things. That's why, one of the many reasons why I don't charge for these is because it's not a revenue driver for me. It is very much a like, I want to connect to my audience. Like, this is what feels really, really good for me. And not only does it feel good for you to be able to connect and be like involved in what your audience is working on, but it also really does help for people when they come into your world to think about like, are you the right person to help me on the journey? Do I like your vibe? Do I like how you think about things? Do I like how you teach? Am I curious about your offers? Can I ask you questions about your offers? So it serves that purpose of building trust and connecting with your people. Then, of course, we have the intention of like, this makes money. Like, we run businesses here, like we want to make money. So that's going to be probably the main intention for a lot of pieces of your offer ecosystem. So I don't want you to feel like, sometimes you're gonna be like, oh, like, saying that this is just for connection and trust feels so much better. Like, I feel bad saying that this is to make money. It's like, no, we're going to make money, and we're going to build connection, and we're going to demonstrate thought leadership, and we're going to make sales. A lot of pieces are going to do all of the above. But it can be helpful to choose kind of the like main purpose, like the main intention, so that when you're crafting that offer, when you're thinking about how it fits into your ecosystem, you can go, oh, well, if the very main number one purpose of this is to build trust, then how do I shape that? If the main purpose is to demonstrate thought leadership, how do I shape that? How does that change how I think about that experience? And then, of course, the kind of other intention or other role that things in our ecosystem can play is sales and conversions. I hate the word conversion, but it's so clear. So I use that. If anyone has a better word, please let me know, because there's something about like saying like, this is a conversion event that just feels like ick. But that is something that things play in our ecosystem, which is their main role is to take people from, I'm in your world, I'm a lead, I'm a person, I'm an audience member, and now I'm ready to be like, I trust you with my journey, here's my money, let's do this. And so very often these are things like workshops, webinars. It can be something where you're like, okay, I know that when I offer this workshop, I can then immediately offer, like, say, you're invited to come join me in this paid program or something like that. So there are going to be components of our offer ecosystems where their main purpose is to convert people from being in our world to like a paid member of our world. So I wanted to lay out these different intentions because it can help us when we're thinking about our offer ecosystem, because when we think about designing workshops, webinars, challenges, summits, all of these things, a lot of these things that are sales and conversion events or connection and trust events, they're not the main, or they might not even be paid at all. So there's not revenue associated with them. Sometimes there can be this like scarcity fear that comes up of like, ooh, like, what do I talk about? Or how do I help people? Or how do I walk people through these things without cannibalizing all these things that are green in my ecosystem, like all these things that are going to make money? And so by kind of assigning a role and an intention to the different components, it can help us remember like, oh, right, this is the purpose, this is the intention, this is what I'm doing. And the other thing that I always want to say is that like my personal philosophy that has served me very, very well is that there's no such thing as giving too much away. Like, unless you are literally sharing your entire course for free and then being like, or you could pay me for this, chances are people are always going to go, wow, I love how you think about this. I love how you talk about this. I love what you shared. Like, where do I sign up? So like, that's the other piece that I want to put out here when you're thinking about like sales and conversion components of your offer ecosystem. If you're like, oh, but if I talk about this first step in my process in my webinar, are people going to sign up for my program? The answer is probably like, yeah, if they like your vibe. Like, even if you tell them this is all my stuff, they're still going to go, hey, I want to learn from you. Case in point, You can ask me like literally anything on these course cafes, and I'm never going to say, oh, I talk about that in my course, so I'm not going to answer that. Or like, no, you have to sign up for the incubator. I might say like, these course cafes are only like an hour to 90 minutes. So I don't actually have time to lead you through the same thing that I take like 5 to 6 months to do in the incubator. But I'm happy to give you like your first 2 action steps. And like I said, it's worked really well. And I love being able to show up and give. And I think energetically, it feels so much better to be like, yeah, I'm an open book. Here's all my thoughts. Here's all my things. So before we go into the kind of final component, I just want to check in and see if any questions have come up, how we're feeling about what's been chatted about so far, any clarification that's needed. You can pop it into the chat, or again, if you want to unmute and ask a question. Okay. I'm going to keep going, but feel free to interrupt me if you were like, I know sometimes where it's like, I just needed the silence to go on like 3 more seconds. And then if no one else had spoken up, I was going to ask a question. But I also know for everyone else, it's like, okay, let's keep going. So always feel free to interrupt me if you're like, wait, I had a question. Let's go back. So the final kind of consideration is thinking about what is the cost or the investment of each component in your offer ecosystem. Now, you can think about this in terms of how much are you charging? You can also think about your time and energy investment. So in terms of, if it's a one-to-one service, if it's, a course with a community element that needs to be moderated, you can kind of come up with whatever investment scale feels good for you. Similarly, with the way I've broken up these price points, this is just how I think about them in terms of like my audience and my offer suite. Depending on who you're working with, this scale is going to look very different. Because if you're working with people who have never paid more than like $100 for anything in their life, paying $200 or $300 is high ticket. And if you're like, that's the audience that I serve. Or if you're working with like, I don't know, software engineers in Silicon Valley, like high ticket's probably in like the $20,000 to $50,000 range, and low ticket would be like under $700. So you get to kind of determine what you feel like the range is of people in your audience, and you can adjust this. Again, like on the template, you can change this to like literally whatever you want. I just kind of did this based in general on how things tend to be priced in my world of online business, in my offer suite. So obviously we have free, we have low ticket, which some people say low ticket's like up to like $100. Some people bring it up to like 127 or 147. Again, kind of depending on the audience that you're working with. So I tend to work most with established entrepreneurs who have been in business for a couple of years. They're very often booking out their one-to-one services. So like, they're like, okay, yeah, low ticket, like pretty much like 100 to 150 bucks and under. It's like a take my money, let's do this thing. The middle range investment, we often see kind of smaller size courses to signature courses, very often signature courses that have either a small community or no live elements. That's where we see kind of like that under $1,000. And then high ticket tends to be where we see group programs, mastermind, one-to-one services. Often we can see signature courses that have more live elements or more review in them, that type of thing. Again, like I said, this is super subjective because I have a client whose course is almost $2,000 and has 0 live elements, but he's working with those software engineers. So they're like, that's fine, take my money. So what I want you to do is kind of think about what is the range of investments that you can offer. And again, you get to kind of choose what matters most to you here. For some people, if you're like, the biggest thing is simplicity, like I literally just want to have 1 or 2 offers. I don't want to think about anything else. I don't want to offer more than anything else. I just want 1 or 2. Awesome. Some people are like, I want to have lots of different things. And like, I want people to be able to pick and choose. I know for me, when I was looking at my offer ecosystem, one of the things that I really wanted to make sure is that I was able to serve people at different price points and different points of their journey. So even though it's a similar transformation, so for instance, if you work with me one-to-one, you're going to come to me with an idea and we are going to design out the curriculum of your signature program. If you buy Course Creation Magic, you're going to start with an idea and you are going to walk yourself through mapping out the curriculum for your signature program. If you join the incubator, you're going to get a hybrid of both. You're going to get Course Creation Magic to map out your curriculum, and you're going to get my one-to-one feedback on what you're working on. Now, the price range, if you work with me one-to-one, $7,500 plus. If you join an incubator, it's $4,400. If you buy Course Creation Magic on its own, it's about $700, or you can like bundle it with other courses. So there's a range. And then if you come even further down, one of the reasons I also wanted to have Course Cafes be free is that if you're not prepared to make any investment right now, I also don't want to gatekeep that support. So accessibility of different pricing was one of the main things driving my offer ecosystem. When I first started, I just had one-to-one services. When I started putting courses into it, I had no intention of having a course on course. I very much was like, oh, there's so many courses on courses. I don't need to create that. I'll just create other things that are helpful. And then I started getting asked to have courses on courses for people who are like, I'm not at the point where I can invest in working with you one-on-one. And I went, great, I still want to be able to help you. And that's how the Magic Suite came to life. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this by any means. If you want to have one or two courses, or one or two offers, if you want to have, this is the price point and that's it, that's totally fine. Again, there's no wrong way to build this out. These are just different things that I want you to think about as you're starting to map stuff out. So now that we have gone through kind of the 4 factors, let me get back on my screen here. There we go. Let's see if I can get this all in one. Whoop. All right. I'm just going to do this way so you don't see too much here. We've talked about the journey to transformation. So what is the full outcome that we can support people with? And if we have a visual or a rough idea of those different structures or different focal areas, what does that look like? We've talked about the different containers or different formats that your offers can exist in. We've talked about the intention or the role that those can play. And we've talked about the investment that can be associated with those. So price point, energy, time, all of those things. When we are mapping out your offer ecosystem, any one of these 4 things can be your starting point. I recommend that if you're stuck, starting with the transformation is probably going to be easiest because you can kind of look at it and go, okay, great. I could put that whole transformation in one offer. Or you'd go like, that's epically huge. Like I need to break it up into chunks. And maybe I do like 1 chunk per offer or 2 chunks in one offer, that type of thing. It tends to be the easiest starting point. But maybe for you, you might be saying like, my one-to-one services are maxed out and I'm ready to add some scalability into my ecosystem. So I need to play around with like what type of format or container would feel really, really good for me. Or you might be saying like, you know what, I want to add revenue in. So I need to like figure out how to bring in another revenue component. Or I don't feel like I have enough like connection and trust building. I want to put that out there. Or like my thoughts are super cool and I need to get them out there on a higher level. So maybe that's something that needs to come in. So maybe you start with intention and then go into container. And then you look at your transformation to see where does it fit. Or you might say, oh, you know what? Everything I have is kind of around the low to mid ticket range. I really think that I should add in like a high ticket offer or something like that. Lois, yes, go for it. You feel welcome to unmute. Yeah.
Question. I'm wondering, does market research really play much, validity in setting prices? Because it seems like it's so much more based on kind of mindset and authority.
Do you mind just repeating? You're just really quiet. I just couldn't quite hear you. I don't know if that was just on my end or if everyone do. Yeah, it was very quiet. I don't know if maybe your mic's not quite close enough to you. Do you mind just repeating that?
Sorry, Zoom turns down my mic every once in a while.
Yeah, there we go, better.
Do you think kind of market research plays much part in setting the price for courses? Because it seems like it's so much more dependent upon the mindset and the authority of the person offering.
I think it's a both and here. This is a great question because in general, I don't really like doing the market research of like, how much would you pay for this course? Or like, would you pay for this course? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of times where people will say like, yeah, I'd pay. But until they actually give you the money, you don't know. And also if you say like, what would you pay? Most people will always choose the lowest option. So I think market research in that sense, absolutely, like it's probably not, there's not a lot of validity there. And that if you can demonstrate the value and why that your program is the solution to their problems, absolutely, you can command a higher price point. That being said, I think it also comes with that If we look less at market research and more about like a deep knowing of who your audience is, then that's where it shifts. So like I think about one of my clients is a personal trainer and he runs his own gym in the city that I'm in here. And he was asked to like donate some classes and some personal training services to this conference that's run for university students. Now, the type of disposable income that a university student has to pay like $60 to $80 for a personal training session versus the type of disposable income that a working professional have is very, very different. So their idea of like, they can see the value in it, but their kind of like money ceiling and money references are different. So when he was asking me, he's like, I want to donate something. I want to help these students. I was just going to give away some sessions. And I was like, well, if you really want to support them and you want to be able to help them carry on their journey, why don't you donate some class memberships? Because then if they love it and they want to carry on, it's $15 a class instead of like $80 a session. So it's thinking about like, sometimes, yes, it is like, I'm an authority, I can command this price, people trust me, I've got the results, I've got this. But there also is kind of a factor of how much people are used to spending, what numbers they're used to saying, seeing and looking at, like I think about when I used to do corporate instructional design and I went for coffee with someone I used to subcontract with, and she was like asking how I run things and how I do things. And when we used to work together, my hourly rate was between $75 and $150 an hour. And now if you want to get on a 75-minute call with me, it's $1,100. And I know that like I can really support people with that. And I feel very grounded in my pricing. But she was like, she had a visceral like, what? Because in the corporate world, in what she was used to and the client she was used to seeing, like that wouldn't fly. So I think it's a bit of a both and of like knowing who you're working with and who you're speaking to and what numbers they're used to seeing, and knowing that you want to be obsessed with what you're offering and feel really, really good about like the value and the delivery, but also knowing that like if you want, or like I know the value of this is $5,000 and your audience is like, I will spend maybe 200 and that is absolutely the most I would ever spend, then it's like you're never going to be set up for success. How does that land for you?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great question. Thank you.
Also, just to add on that,
Yeah.
that comparison between like what your audience is willing to spend and what your value in your offer is can be a really good indicator of whether or not you're speaking to the right audience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks for adding that. It's so true. Absolutely. And I think that's like, we could go on like an entire rant too about like the value of an offer and that type of thing as well, because you hear a lot of things like charge what you're worth, charge what you're worth. And we're like, we're going to separate your worth out from what the offer is worth and the value of it. And also thinking about the fact that there are other considerations for pricing. So similarly, where like I know with Course Creation Magic, it's a self-study course, and I'm intentionally keeping it at around 700. I'm as part of the revamp, I'm adding a few more things in. Now, when you get it, you get like the course builder box, you're going to get these other trainings, all this fun stuff. But I was like, I want to keep it in that kind of lower price point. Now, if someone goes through Course Creation Magic and they are able to design their course and launch it, they're going to make money off of it. And I can pretty much guarantee they're going to make more than the cost of that course. Like if they build a signature course that they also can charge $700 for, and then they sell 10 of them, which I'm doing the thing that I hate where I'm just making up math based on imaginary numbers that marketers love to do. So hypothetical situation here, they design a course, they sell 10 of them, it's $700, they've made $7,000. So yeah, I could charge $7,000 for that course because theoretically there's this return on investment. But I'm also bringing into consideration the fact that I'm like, this is an accessible part of my offer suite. This is a reason I want this to be self-study. I want this to be for people who are like, I'm not ready for the incubator. I'm not ready for one-to-one, or I don't need that much one-to-one support. I feel like I can do it on my own. Or, in this case, that course also lives inside the incubator. So it's a way of guiding them through it. So it serves multiple purposes. So there's a lot that can go into the pricing. And that's why it always full permission to change your pricing, or like Monica suggested, maybe look at like, is there a misalignment within your audience, or do you feel aligned with, what they're willing to pay or what they're thinking of paying? There are lots of little like micro shifts that can happen there. Okay, let's look at some examples here. And feel free at any point to raise your hand or to come off mute or to ask in the chat if you want me to like go deeper into anything. So let's zoom in here. And like I said, you're going to get this Canva document, so you'll be able to see all these things, and then you'll be even able to like grab all the different shapes and like build up your own thing. So here's one example. This is the super standard ascension model that we see. This is the one that I feel can be very restricting. And so in general, that's why I think about things as ecosystems, because sometimes just a linear ascension model just doesn't work. Other times it does. So this is where you start with something free or very, very low ticket. Its main thing is to build trust. And you can see I doubled up on colors here when there was multiple purposes. So building trust and also being like a sales and conversion tool. And then as we move up, it gets higher priced and it gets to a more close to you, more of your time. And we get further along the journey. Now, some people do this in a couple different ways. One is it's just like, let's say there's like 4 steps to the journey. The further along the journey we get, the more steps that we get. So it's kind of like step 1, 2, 3, 4. Another way we can look at this, I took the staircase out of it for simplicity, is it's still the ascension model in the sense that you start free or cheap, and then you go from like low price, mid price, high price, but every single one of the offers offers the full transformation. There's just more depth and support the more one-to-one access that you get. So these are the 2 kind of very like standard ways we see things happening. We see this a lot in the coaching world, where it's kind of like, I'm going to help you with my focus area of coaching. So let's say it's mindset coaching. So whether you buy my toolkit, you're in my mastermind, you're in my group program, you're in my course, you're in my one-to-one, I am guiding you on working through your mindset blocks. But the main thing that changes is the price point and the level of access that you get to me. So there's nothing wrong with these by any means. I just wanted to give you some other examples of other ways if you're finding that this is feeling a bit constricting. So one that we have here, this is based on someone who has a signature framework of 3 pillars. So this is adapted from one of my clients. I didn't use her actual pillars or anything like that, but I wanted you to be able to see what's going on here. So this would be, there's 3 potential focal areas, 3 areas that come together for the full transformation. And so in this case, you have one offer. So in her case, it's a membership, and the membership covers everything. So you come in, you get access to courses, resources, coaching, all the things. It's one offer, and it covers everything in the ecosystem. So I really wanted to show you this one to show you that you don't have to have 5 million things in your ecosystem. Like, you really don't. Because some of these other ones I'm going to show you, there's a lot of moving pieces. And I don't want to give you the sense that like, oh, to have a good functioning ecosystem, I need to have 15 million offers. Nope. You get to have as many or as few as feel good to you. So in this case, for her, she's got the one offer. Now, for simplicity's sake, I just put the one on there. She also speaks at summits. So we could put like a little like kind of floating somewhere in the middle here, like guest workshops, because it covers all the things. But in general, there's the one offer that covers the full transformation. Now, with the same type of framework, same focal things, same 3 pillars, we could also look at a different way of breaking it up, where instead of having one service, you could have a one-to-one service that covers all 3. You could have a group program that covers 2. You could have a VIP day that covers 2. You could have a lead magnet that focuses on 1. You could have a book that focuses on 1. You could have a toolkit that focuses on 1. So this is, again, a sense of like, you can have different offers that kind of zoom in on different parts of what you do and your transformation. So you don't need to have every single thing that you do cover every single thing that you do. Now, the nuance and the complexity of like, well, what covers what, this is where we get into the learning experience design of it, where we start to feel like, what is a sustainable transformation? What feels manageable? Can I lead people through a full transformation in a self-study format, or do I need to break things up smaller? So before I show you my ecosystem, I want to check in to see if there's any questions about these kind of 4 examples that I just showed. No, feeling good. All right, so let's get into mine. It's explosive. All right. So my ecosystem, let's make sure I can get this all on screen here. My ecosystem is based around the program creation cycle. So this is very much the phases that I see people move through when they are designing any sort of learning experience. So for the sake of these examples, I'm going to focus mainly on programs and courses, but really this can apply to any sort of learning experience, from workshops, talks, books, courses, conferences, the whole lot. So the cycle begins by connecting to your people, a deep understanding of who your people are and who you want to serve and how you want to serve them, how connecting to yourself, what matters most to you, what your intentions are, what your purpose is. Then we move into design, which is very much my zone of genius, which is why you can see the bulk of what I offer lives in this design area. So this is the actual learning experience design, the transformation architecture, mapping out the journey, the components, the actions, the experience. We move into building, which is where we're actually building the materials like slides, workbooks, videos, questionnaires, onboarding sequences, all that good stuff. We get into how do we deliver the experience, running group calls, managing a community, just seeing how your course is running or how the experience is going, delivering a workshop. And then we get into reflect, which is, how is this all working? What are my people saying? How am I feeling? How is it landing? What needs to change? What needs to evolve? Which leads us back around into connect. So this is the whole journey that I can take people on, from idea all the way through to designed, built, launched, delivered, running, evolving, changing, elevating their program. Now, if I did absolutely all of this in one program, it would be like 2 years long, which would be completely like unsustainable for anyone to say like, okay, we're going to go through the entire process, start to finish, multiple times. We can't do that. So this is where I started thinking about, how can I break things up? Now, like I mentioned, when I first started, I just had my one-to-one services and I just did design. I didn't build any materials. I did enough of that in my corporate world. I was like, I'm never building a slide deck again. I didn't help with the delivery or anything like that. But through the questions that I received from my clients, I realized there started to be this pattern of a lot of people are feeling nervous about how to run group calls. So I was like, okay, I can build out this little toolkit just to help people. It was mainly going to be for my clients, but I was like, I guess I'll sell it. I can help people with the delivery piece. And then I started getting asked questions like, okay, but like, what makes best practices for a workbook that doesn't suck? Or how do I streamline my video recording process? Or how do I make sure that the actual build out of my program reflects the awesomeness of the design that we have? So I was like, okay, I'll build out a toolkit too. And it kind of evolved from there. It started in response to what I was being asked for. And then I started to have that question around accessibility and pricing, or the experience that I wanted to facilitate, or scalability for myself. And that's where these other pieces started to come from. So it started by adding in these more self-study courses, so the Magic Suite courses that I've mentioned before. And recently this started, I think it's about 1.5 years ago now, I had the vision for the incubator, which kind of encompasses everything. It wraps around all of my self-study suite. So every single course that I have, and it blends the group program in with the one-to-one support, because I knew I was like, I want there to be a hybrid. And I was like, I want to be able to guide people through this whole experience. But like I mentioned, I was like, that's a long time. So this helped me in the crafting of the incubator, which is why it's a 4-month initial commitment that then can be rolled, where people can stay as long as they want. Because I didn't want to say to someone like, if you wanted to do this, it's going to take you like 2 years to go through the whole thing. If you want to like have an idea and design your course and build your course and launch your course multiple times and deliver it and see what's working and come back and then refresh it, like, I don't like, people would be terrified. So it's like, how do I honor this full ecosystem, but also honor the sustainability and the needs of my people? And then you can see I've got some other pieces in here. I've got my little lead magnets, which currently are free, but they're going to soon, I'm elevating them to actually be mini courses that are going to have a little teeny tiny price point on them. Just a little $11 to help people kick off, whether they're brand new in the cycle and they want to start at Connect, or they have an existing program, they want to evolve it. You can see I've got guest workshops that I tend to focus on delivery and design in my guest presentations, because they're like the things that I'm most passionate about. You can see my course cafes kind of hover in the middle here, because I can talk about any and all the things in the course cafes. So you can see how there's lots of different pieces in here, and the kind of intentionality and how it's evolved over time. I didn't come out of the gate starting my business going, I need to have all of these things, here we go. I was like, okay, I've been asked how to run good workshops very recently based off of last month's Course Cafe. I was like, oh, people have a ton of questions about frameworks. I could actually create a toolkit on frameworks. So that is a very recent addition. So we've talked a long time. I want to check in and see what questions you have. I see that Alex says, do you have a page on your website that explains your offer ecosystem in this detail? I really like it, but explaining helping customers visualize this sounds like it could be a challenge with this many offers. Yes, absolutely. So currently the way I have it on my website, which is going to evolve, is I have them kind of like delineated out on a program page. So I say like, I think it starts with the Magic Suite courses where I go course creation magic and group program magic, design your offer. And then there's a banner that's like, if you want live support, check out the incubator. It's on a totally different page. And then I say, check out these toolkits. So I've actually created like categories within my ecosystem where they're different sizes or scales. Thanks so much for coming, Monica. It was great to see you. And the other thing that I want to say too is that not all of these are currently public on my site. So for instance, Launch Magic is only available if you're in the incubator or you're a private client. And these kind of little toolkits here too. Oh, thanks so much, Lois, for coming. It was great to hear from you. Some of these little toolkits are also just tucked as little bonuses. And the way I've also designed my ecosystem is that lots of things are bundled and lots of things apply into other things. So like Course Builder Box is connected to Course Creation Magic, Group Called Confidence is connected to Group Program Magic, the incubator has all the things. If you buy the Magic Suite, you can apply it in. So it's one of those things where if you just sat down to explain it to someone, it would be like, blah, like it would sound like a lot. So what I would encourage you to do is as you're mapping this out, think about like, are there categories? So for instance, like your one-to-one services or like, I don't even have my VIP days listed on my website because they're just like a pop-up offer that happens here and there. But I have, one-to-one offers. I have the incubator as its own thing. And then I have a page that lists out my courses and they're grouped by category. So like signature courses, workshops, toolkits, that type of thing. So it's very easy for people to see like, oh, this is a little snack or like, this is a bigger thing. And also knowing that 98% of the time, I use 98 a lot in my percentages, but we're speaking to people who know us and they know our world and they've been around. Oh, Danielle has to hop off as well. Thanks so much, Danielle. They're in our world and they are engaging with us. Oh, and Greta's also hopping up. Thanks, Greta. They have engaged with us for a long time. So they've heard these words. They kind of know what we do. There's an opportunity to kind of explain things. It's very rare that we're getting someone who's like completely cold. And then they're like, I'm going to land on here and I'm going to try to go through all the things. It happens. It absolutely happens. That's why SEO is so amazing. But in general, people are going to kind of exist. So thinking about like the journey that you're guiding people through. And I probably wouldn't like lay things out this way. I think coming up with categories and streamlining it so that people know, oh, group programs, courses, this, that, or the other, even things like, guest workshops and stuff like that, they're probably not even present on your website. So there's a few different ways you can kind of bring it together. Let me know how that lands, if there's any like follow-up questions on that. And Paula says, it's refreshing to hear that building things and getting them to work takes time. I'm so sick of hearing coaches saying you can create your course in a weekend. I'm building constantly, working so hard, not aiming to indulge in perfectionism, and it still takes time. Absolutely. Anytime someone says it can be done in a weekend, it makes me want to kill them because it's setting you up for disappointment. I have built a course in a day. I didn't do this entire process in a day. I designed it weeks out and then I mega procrastinated. And then I recorded and designed everything, like built all the things in a day. This was for my workshops toolkit. It's very small. There's like, a handful of video trainings and there's some text lessons. And I was able to repurpose a lot of existing stuff. And even then it was like a 9 in the morning till like 3 a.m. at night process. And I will never do it again. And I would never let anyone, I would like never tell anyone to do that. So it's like, why whip it together in a weekend? Like, you don't need to. You can take the time. You can like sink into it and like luxuriate in it. And like, that's why with the incubator, I was like, I want minimum 4 months is like probably the fastest you could do it in if it's like your number one focus. But like, you get to give yourself more time. Like, You get to take as long as you need. And so I think it's really important to like not feel rushed, whether it's in designing and building an individual offer or mapping out your entire ecosystem. Okay, so I know we're kind of hitting time here. So I just want to check in and see what other questions people have. Yes, Paula, go for it.
Is it okay if I unmute?
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah. One second, because yes, I can hear you now. Basically, my question is, I have this when I look at my offers ecosystem, and I'm building towards getting my course done, and I'm very close to running the beta, which I am thinking to prepare the promo material this week, and then a promo week with open cart, and then I start running it in May, so start beginning of May. And all I have, like at the moment, I refuse to have, right after this, I want to attach to this a mini membership. I'm very attracted to the model of offering a way to get in and get to deliver some content in bite-sized pieces for $7 a month, where people can come in with no risk, basically, and they can come and hang out with no risk. And then if they want to grow, they can progress to other levels, etc. So this is how I want to start. But now I am at a point where I need to focus only on one, because focusing on these two are two big things, and I can't quite do the two things at the same time. But when I look at my course, I refuse to deliver, even if it's a beta, I refuse to do the beta as like, oh, you just you just pre-sell it before you create it, and then you deliver it live, because of course you are a source of infinite information and knowledge, and you just stem it out of your head and you just talk, and I'm like, no, I cannot do that. I can't, because I wanted to have, I'm not saying I need to be perfectionist and to have a perfect product, but I wanted to have it, at least a like my content laid out in front of me, and then I can talk about it, and then I can make my lessons, and I can start doing that. My problem is that now that I have this thing and I want to run it, because it's been long enough, I've taken my 2-3 months to prepare it, etc. I have reached a point of bottleneck, because I would like to have some slides going with it, and I have a bunch of slides that are half done and they're not. I need to spend some more time on that, and I feel that my offer needs to come out now. But how do I film without the slides? So I'm thinking, I need to spend some solid time on promotion messaging, really catering to my promotion, but I also need to spend time in creation, finishing the slides and finishing, so I can film things and I can put it on, and because that is the beginning of my scalable offer suite, ecosystem. Because at the moment I can do the one-to-one and I can do small other things, but I really want to have this as it is transformational. I really want to get it out there and start testing. It needs to, you can't teach things in your head. You've got to teach by serving and by doing, and I need to be doing soon. So I was wondering if you had a snippet of wisdom for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you've like very much captured a struggle that like most heart-centered people have when they're creating a scalable offer, which is the like, I want to make sure it's really freaking good the first time. Like, I'm not willing to just like put out like whatever I've whipped together and like cut corners and stuff like that. And I also understand the kind of like, I want to have something very like solid and prepared and structured before I start selling it, both for my own values, but also it just feels better to not be like, well, I've sold these things and like nothing's ready yet. So I think everything that you've kind of said about like what you've shared, it totally makes sense. And like, I've definitely been there, and I know my clients experience that a lot. So like, first of all, just very much normalizing the experience. Like, you're not doing anything wrong. It's not like a you thing. Like, it's something that we all very much experience. And so I think this is where sometimes we can look at like, is there a happy medium, or is there something where like, okay, it sounds like you've got your program structured out, like you know what the journey is, you know what you're helping people with, that type of thing. And for me, like that's how you pre-sell ethically, is if you're like, I'm so clear on the transformation. I know how I'm going to get you there. I know the structures of it. I know all the pieces. I just haven't like built them yet. Is very different from like, I think I'm going to have a course on this and people can sign up and I'll just figure it out. Like very different energies. So sometimes it can be like when we remind ourselves that like that's a very different vibe, then thinking about like, okay, I'm going to pre-sell and I'm going to give myself like 2 months of buffer before the course is live so that I can get like the motivation and the excitement of seeing like, oh, people are signing up for this. This is great. So then like, if you're like me and you're very deadline driven, sometimes knowing like, oh, I told people this would be available May 15th, like I got to build those slides. Then you're seeing the sales come in and you're like, okay, this is amazing. Like I'm super excited about this. Now I feel energized and I want to do the slides. So that's kind of like one approach. The other is to think about that, like, it's a lot of creation energy in the phase that you're in right now, which is the like, you have to, like you said, create sales pages and emails and marketing and promo. I have to create slides and videos and workbooks and course platforms. Like it's a lot of like output. And so sometimes what we need to do is like separate those out and kind of give yourself permission to switch between the two. Like I'm going to be in marketing mode. So I'm going to work on some marketing stuff. Then I'm going to give myself a day of like rejuvenation. And then I'm going to flip over to building mode, because sometimes having like a little bit of that task switching can actually feel like, even though it's still creation, because it's such a different energy of like sales and marketing versus like slides and educating, it can be helpful. Yeah, you can kind of, yeah, it's like, it's very different. So for some people are like, nope, I don't want to switch. Like I need to be in one, I need to be in the other. And other times it can be like, oh, I'm so sick of sales energy. So then it's like, okay, great. Now I feel excited to do my slides. Also knowing that, like, as you know, full permission at any time to not do slides at all. If there's a way that feels more fun, like if you just want to share your screen and talk through a workbook, if you want to have notes and just say, hey, I'm just going to look at my notes, like you can do that. Like there's nothing that says that you either can have slides when you present or you have to have your entire thing memorized and just talk. It's totally fine to have like that. Or like, you know, I really truly hate slides. So like for today, like that's why I built it out in a whiteboard where I was like, I can just move around and like show you these things. So if you're excited and you want to have slides, like go for it. But if the idea of slides is like killing a part of your soul, also full permission to like find a different way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's that frees me up a bit. I don't mind. I think I don't mind seeing the slides. I just think there are so many little moving pieces to those slides that are, you know, really clogging me up. So if I choose to do the slides in a simple way, like to really streamline and you know, just do this simple slide deck. So if it's simple, it's probably going to be less burdensome. Therefore, I can, because for me, I do find that when I focus on my messaging and my promotion and marketing of it, etc., I am in a completely different energy. And when I build my course, I literally retreat into my cave and I'm here with my material and put out my content. And it's just, I can't do both. I can't even post in my Facebook group to engage people. I am in that, like I have to compartmentalize that much. So I feel that's very challenging.
Yeah. And it's completely understandable that it is such different energies. So I think like giving yourself permission to let it be different energies and say like, okay, like I'm in marketing mode today, or I'm in like easy, fun slide creation mode today. Like asking yourself, like, how can I make the slide part of things as easy and fun and simple as possible? Like that's your challenge. And the thing that I'll say too is I don't think I have ever heard someone say like, wow, I bought Paola's course and she was amazing. It was so helpful. It was exactly what I needed. It's the best experience ever. But like, man, the slides were so ugly. The slides were the roughest. Like no one's going to say that. Like the only thing that makes slides bad is when there's too much text on them. So like, you know, as long as you err on the side of less is more and just say like, here's my 3 key points, they can be like a basic white background slide with like black text with cat bullets, and like you'll be fine.
They're actually really pretty because I have a lot of neon elements in my slide. So
Yeah.
they're actually like a pink and blue background, and they
Fun.
quite a lot of neon elements. Well, not a lot, like doesn't give you a headache,
Mm.
but they're quite pretty.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I can ask one more thing, I have gone through your Begin and Evolve, and I really enjoyed it. I probably won't be able to, do things perfectly the first time, but I do want to go and revise the templates that you have in there, because I think there are some things that are really valuable, and I want to, I will have to redo this course a little bit after I do the beta a couple of times. So, and I was, but I was, I know I heard something that you said that a few people have said in different ways, but it really resonated with me, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do that. You said, and many people say, that you should keep your lessons short, and they're going to be best if it is 6 to 8 minutes. And I have structured my course in a way that, apart from the beginning, which is a phase 0, where I don't want to call it fundamentals because people get bored of fundamentals, but but it's basically a section that is more, it gives them a lot of different elements that they will use then in the other 3 sections. But then section 1, 2, and 3 is divided into 3, 3, 3. So 3 lesson, 3 lesson, 3 lesson, because it is some sort of like a nine elements, a sort of, model. But yeah, I don't have 16 lessons. I have 3 per module. They are not going to be 6 minutes. That is for sure. And I'm not going to be able to keep it that short. And I was thinking, can I keep them a bit longer and keep going? Can I do my lessons a bit longer? And yeah, or am I going to bore them to death?
So I think it depends on what you mean by a bit longer. So like I've definitely had lessons that are like 10 minutes or 12 minutes, so like double that amount of time. The thing is that like once we hit there's a couple different factors that come into lesson length. So one is the kind of like psychological motivation factor, which is when someone sees a video that is 6 minutes long or 3 minutes long versus that's like 15, 20, 30 minutes long, they're going to have a bigger battle of like, am I going to watch this right now? And as we know with online courses, there's so many other competing priorities that adults have, which is like, I've got kids, I've got pets, I've got work, I've got exercise, I've got food, I've got all these other things. So we don't really want it to feel like, okay, like I really want to take this course, but like, ooh, 20 minutes. Do I have 20 minutes right now? They probably do. And like, they probably would watch 20 minutes worth of 6-minute videos. But if it's an actual 20-minute video, they're going to think twice about it. So there's kind of like the psychology of it. And then there's the actual learning science of like how much information the brain can take in at any given time and how much it can process before it needs time to implement. So once we start tipping over that like 12 to 15 minute mark, it's actually like, they're like, I'm full, and they're not going to get the full impact unless they have time to integrate it. So even like you'll notice like on today's call, like every so often I'm going, what questions do you have? Or how does this land for you? Because I'm going to stop teaching and I want you to reflect, which is like an action. I want you to think about, oh, do I have any questions? Or how would I apply this to me? Or that type of thing. So we can go longer. So like if your lessons are longer, I'm not going to like hunt you down and like fine you. But I think if you're like, I can tell you really care about people having the best possible experience in your course. So even though like you have your like 3 3s and 3s, I would rather you have 6 6 and 6 and they're like half as long, it's still okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're like, that's a barrier, Emily, I just need to get this course done, I would rather you get the course out there.
Right.
How does that feel?
And then I could possibly restructure it in a way that is smaller pieces, because I could divide those lessons into smaller lessons. Like they still stay as 3 elements of one lesson, but of one section, but they can be divided into small pieces. I'm not sure if I can do it right now because I am literally at the doors of it. So
yeah, you can always change it. That's why it's like we think about the program creation as a cycle. You can just get it out there, see how it lands, because even through your beta, you might notice that, oh, people have more questions, or like I need to go way deeper on this thing. Like I thought it was one lesson, but it's actually its own section. We no longer have 3 sections or whatever. So really, truly, the number one priority is you getting it out there in a way that feels good to you. And then we can always change things later. So even if you're like, Emily, each lesson's an hour, I'll go, okay, like just get it out there. But I mean,
Hopefully it won't be an hour,
yeah,
but I hear
if you
you.
can keep it under 20 minutes, I will be happy. That would be my challenge. I let you go above 6, try to keep it under 20. If you go above 20, okay, but we'll change it later.
Okay, thank you. That's a good range to go between. Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Not
so
way
welcome.
more.
You're so welcome.
Okay.
Okay, so Sandra and Kelly, we both have you still on the call. Did you have any questions or want feedback on anything or anything you wanted to chat about before we wrap up for today? Maybe just listening in. Okay, amazing. All right, well, I'm going to start wrapping up, but if anything comes up for either of you, feel free to interrupt me. But I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who watching this, whether you're on the replay, for those of you who came live, and for asking questions. It was just so phenomenal. I'm so excited about hearing more about how your offer ecosystems are coming to life. So I'm going to be sending out the link to this replay. You're going to get the link to that Canva template as well as part of that replay so that you can play around with mapping out your own offer ecosystem. Everything that is in that template is really just a baseline. So you get to customize it. If you're like, I don't like the shapes, I don't like the colors, I don't like the intentions, I don't like the language, change everything. The goal is for you to have this feel really, 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 really good for you. And then what I'll also include in that email is I have a few fun spring promotions going on. I've got a special promotion going on for the London VIP Day, which is happening next month in May. It's going to be in person in London. It's going to be so much fun. And so for those of you who are like, I've mapped out this offer ecosystem and now I really want to bring this scalable piece to life, you can come join us in London. You can come join the incubator. We can play around with other options. So I'm going to share all about it because for everyone who is watching the Course Cafe, you get special discounts on everything, which is super fun. So thank you all so much. It was so wonderful to see you and hear from you. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much, everyone.